Chukat. First reading, Abraham, CHESED. And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, saying, This is the statute of the law which the Lord has commanded, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, that they bring you a red heifer, faultless, with no blemish, and upon which never came yoke. And you shall give her to Eleazar the priest, and she shall be brought forth outside the camp, and she shall be slain before his face. And Eleazar the priest shall take of her blood with his finger, and sprinkle of her blood toward the front of the tent of meeting 7 times. And the heifer shall be burnt in his sight. Her skin and her flesh and her blood with her dung shall be burnt. And the priest shall take cedar wood and hyssop and scarlet, and cast it into the midst of the burning of the heifer. Then the priest shall wash his clothes, and he shall bathe his flesh in water, and afterward he may come into the camp, and the priest shall be unclean until the evening. And he that burned her shall wash his clothes in water, and bathe his flesh in water, and shall be unclean until the evening. And a man that is clean shall gather up the ashes of the heifer, and store them up outside the camp in a clean place, and it shall be kept for the congregation of the children of Israel for the purification water of sprinkling from sin. And he that gathered the ashes of the heifer shall wash his clothes, and be unclean until the evening. And it shall be to the children of Israel, and to the stranger that dwells among them, as a statute forever. He that touches the dead, even any man's dead body, shall be unclean 7 days. The same shall purify himself therewith on the 3rd day and on the 7th day, and he shall be clean. But if he does not purify himself on the 3rd day and the 7th day, he shall not be clean. Whoever touches the dead, even the body of any man that is dead, and does not purify himself, has defiled the tabernacle of the Lord, and that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Because the water of sprinkling was not dashed against him, he shall be unclean. His uncleanness is yet upon him. This is the law. When a man dies in a tent, every one that comes into the tent, and everything that is in the tent, shall be unclean 7 days. And every open vessel which has no covering bound upon it is unclean. And whoever in the open field touches one that is slain with a sword, or one that dies of himself, or a bone of a man, or a grave, shall be unclean 7 days. And for the unclean they shall take of the ashes of the burning of the purification from sin, and put it together with running water in a vessel. Chukat. Second reading, Isaac, GEVURAH. And a clean person shall take hyssop, and dip it in the water, and sprinkle it upon the tent, and upon all the vessels, and upon the persons that were there, and upon him that touched the bone, or the slain, or the dead, or the grave. And the clean person shall sprinkle upon the unclean on the 3rd day and on the 7th day. And on the 7th day he shall purify him, and he shall wash his clothes, and bathe himself in water, and shall be clean in the evening. But the man that shall be unclean, and shall not purify himself, that soul shall be cut off from the midst of the assembly, because he has defiled the sanctuary of the Lord. The water of sprinkling hath not been dashed against him, he is unclean. And it shall be a perpetual statute to them. And he that sprinkles the water of sprinkling shall wash his clothes. And he that touches the water of sprinkling shall be unclean until the evening. And whatever the unclean person touches shall be unclean. And the soul that touches him shall be unclean until the evening. And the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came into the wilderness of Zin in the 1st month, and the people stayed in Kadesh, and Miriam died there, and was buried there. And there was no water for the congregation, and they assembled themselves together against Moses and against Aaron. And the people contended with Moses and spoke, saying, Would that we had perished when our brethren perished before the Lord. And why have you brought the assembly of the Lord into this wilderness, to die there, we and our cattle? And why have you made us to come up out of Egypt, to bring us into this evil place? It is no place of grain, or of figs, or of vines, or of pomegranates, neither is there any water to drink. And Moses and Aaron went from the presence of the assembly to the door of the tent of meeting, and fell upon their faces, and the glory of the Lord appeared to them. Chukat. Third reading, Jacob, TIFERET. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Take the rod and assemble the congregation, you and Aaron, your brother, and speak to the rock before their eyes, that it give forth its water. And you shall bring forth to them water out of the rock, so you shall give the congregation and their cattle to drink. And Moses took the rod from before the Lord as he commanded him. And Moses and Aaron gathered the assembly together before the rock, and he said to them, Hear now, you rebels, are we to bring you forth water out of this rock? And Moses lifted up his hand and smote the rock with his rod twice, and water came forth abundantly, and the congregation and their cattle drank. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, Because you did not believe in me, to sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore you shall not bring this assembly into the land which I have given them. These are the waters of Meribah, where the children of Israel contended with the Lord, and he was sanctified in them. Chukat. Fourth reading, Moses, NETZACH. And Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. So says your brother Israel, You know all the hardship that has befallen us, how our fathers went down into Egypt, and we dwelt in Egypt a long time. And the Egyptians dealt ill with us and our fathers. And when we cried to the Lord, he heard our voice, and sent an angel, and brought us forth out of Egypt. And behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of your border. Let us pass, I pray you, through your land. We will not pass through field or through vineyard, neither will we drink of the water of the wells. We will go along the king's highway. We will not turn aside to the right hand nor to the left, until we have passed your border. And Edom said to him, You shall not pass through me, lest I come out with the sword against you. And the children of Israel said to him, We will go up by the highway, and if we drink of your water, I and my cattle, then will I give the price thereof. Let me only pass through on my feet. There is no hurt. And he said, You shall not pass through. And Edom came out against him with many people, and with a strong hand. Edom refused to give Israel passage through his border, so Israel turned away from him. Chukat. Fifth reading, Aaron, Hod. And they journeyed from Kadesh, and the children of Israel, the whole congregation, came to Mount Hor. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron in Mount Hor, by the border of the land of Edom, saying, Aaron shall be gathered to his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given to the children of Israel, because you rebelled against my word at the waters of Meribah. Take Aaron and Eleazar his son, and bring them up to Mount Hor, and strip Aaron of his garments, and put them on Eleazar his son, and Aaron shall be gathered to his people, and shall die there. And Moses did as the Lord commanded, and they went up into Mount Hor, in the sight of all the congregation. And Moses stripped Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son. And Aaron died there, on top of the mount. And Moses and Eleazar came down from the mount. And when all the congregation saw that Aaron was dead, they wept for Aaron 30 days, all the house of Israel. And the Canaanite, the king of Arad, who dwelt in the south, heard that Israel came by the way of Atarim, and he fought against Israel, and took some of them captive. And Israel vowed a vow to the Lord, and said, If you will indeed deliver this people into my hand, then I will utterly destroy their cities. And the Lord hearkened to the voice of Israel, and delivered up the Canaanites, and they utterly destroyed them and their cities. And the name of the place was called Hormah. And they journeyed from Mount Hor by the way to the Red Sea, to compass the land of Edom. And the soul of the people became impatient because of the way. And the people spoke against God and against Moses. Why have you brought us up out of Egypt to die in the wilderness? For there is no bread, and there is no water, and our soul loathes this light bread. And the Lord sent fiery serpents among the people, and they bit the people, and many people of Israel died. And the people came to Moses and said, We have sinned, because we have spoken against the Lord and against you. Pray to the Lord, that he take away the serpents from us. And Moses prayed for the people. And the Lord said to Moses, Make a fiery serpent, and set it upon a pole. And it shall come to pass, that every one that is bitten, when he sees it, shall live. And Moses made a serpent of brass, and set it upon the pole. And it came to pass, that if a serpent had bitten any man, when he looked at the serpent of brass, he lived. Chukat, 6th reading, Joseph, YESOD. And the children of Israel journeyed and pitched in Obot. And they journeyed from Obot and pitched at Abarim, in the wilderness which is in front of Moab, toward the sunrise. From there they journeyed and pitched in the valley of Zered. From there they journeyed and pitched on the other side of the Arnon, which is in the wilderness, that comes out of the border of the Amorites. Arnon is the border of Moab, between Moab and the Amorites, where it is said in the book of the wars of the Lord, Vaheb in Suphah, and the valleys of Arnon, and the slope of the valleys that incline toward the seat of Ar, and leans upon the border of Moab, and from there to Be'er, that is the well where the Lord said to Moses, Gather the people together, and I will give them water. Then sang Israel this song, Spring up, well, all of you sing to it. The well which the princes sank, which the nobles of the people had dug, with the scepter and with their staves, and from the wilderness to Mattanah, and from Mattanah to Nachliel, and from Nachliel to Bamot, and from Bamot to the valley that is in the field of Moab, by the top of Pisgah, which looks down upon the desert. Chukat, 7th reading, David, MALCHUT. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, saying, Let me pass through your land. We will not turn aside into field or into vineyard. We will not drink of the water of the wells. We will go by the king's highway, until we have passed your border. And Sihon would not allow Israel to pass through his border. But Sihon gathered all his people together, and went out against Israel into the wilderness, and came to Yahatz. And he fought against Israel. And Israel smote him with the edge of the sword, and possessed his land from the Arnon to the Yabok, to the children of Ammon. For the border of the children of Ammon was strong. And Israel took all these cities, And Israel dwelt in all the cities of the Amorites, in Heshbon, and in all its towns. For Heshbon was the city of Sihon, the king of the Amorites, who had fought against the former king of Moab, and had taken all his land out of his hand to the Arnon. Therefore those that speak in parables say, Come you to Heshbon, let the city of Sihon be built and established. For a fire has gone out of Heshbon, a flame from the city of Sihon. It has devoured Og of Moab, the lords of the high places of Arnon. Woe to you, Moab! You are undone, people of Chemosh. He has given his sons as fugitives, and his daughters into captivity, to Sihon, king of the Amorites. We have shot at them. Heshbon has perished, to Dibon, and we have laid waste to Nophach, which reaches to Medaba. So Israel dwelt in the land of the Amorites. And Moses sent to spy out Yazer, and they took those towns and drove out the Amorites that were there. And they turned and went up by the way of Bashan, and Og, the king of Bashan, went out against them, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. Chukat, maftir. And the Lord said to Moses, Do not fear him, for I have delivered him into your hand, and all his people, and his land, and you shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So they smote him and his sons and all his people, until there was no survivor remaining, and they possessed his land. And the children of Israel journeyed, and pitched in the plains of Moab, beyond the Jordan at Jericho. Haftarah of Chukat, Judges 11:1-33. Now Yiftach the Gileadite was a mighty man of valor, and he was the son of a harlot, and Gilad begot Yiftach. And Gilad's wife bore him sons, and when his wife's sons grew up, they drove out Yiftach, and said to him, You shall not inherit in our father's house, for you are the son of another woman. Then Yiftach fled from his brethren, and dwelt in the land of Tov. And there were gathered vain fellows to Yiftach, and they went out with him. And it came to pass after a while, that the children of Ammon made war against Israel. And it was so, that when the children of Ammon made war against Israel, the elders of Gilad went to fetch Yiftach out of the land of Tov. And they said to Yiftach, Come and be our chief, that we may fight with the children of Ammon. And Yiftach said to the elders of Gilad, Did you not hate me, and drive me out of my father's house? Why have you come to me now when you are in distress? And the elders of Gilad said to Yiftach, That is why we have returned to you now, so you may go with us and fight with the children of Ammon, and you shall be our head over all the inhabitants of Gilad. And Yiftach said to the elders of Gilad, If you bring me back home to fight with the children of Ammon, and the Lord deliver them before me, I will be your head. And the elders of Gilad said to Yiftach, The Lord shall be witness between us. Surely, according to your word, so will we do. Then Yiftach went with the elders of Gilad, and the people made him head and chief over them. And Yiftach spoke all his words before the Lord in Mitzpah. And Yiftach sent messengers to the king of the children of Ammon, saying, What have you to do with me, that you come to me to fight against my land? And the king of the children of Ammon answered to the messengers of Yiftach, Because Israel took away my land when he came up out of Egypt, from the Arnon to the Yabok, and to the Jordan. Now therefore restore those cities peacefully. And Yiftach sent messengers again to the king of the children of Ammon, and he said to him, So says Yiftach, Israel did not take away the land of Moab, nor the land of the children of Ammon. But when they came up from Egypt, and Israel walked through the wilderness to the Red Sea, and came to Kadesh, Israel sent messengers to the king of Edom, saying, Let me, I pray you, pass through your land. But the king of Edom hearkened not, and in like manner he sent to the king of Moab, but he would not. And Israel stayed in Kadesh. Then he walked through the wilderness, and compassed the land of Edom and the land of Moab, and came by the east side of the land of Moab, and they pitched on the other side of the Arnon. But they did not come within the border of Moab, for the Arnon was the border of Moab. And Israel sent messengers to Sihon, king of the Amorites, the king of Heshbon. And Israel said to him, Let us pass, we pray you, through your land to my place. But Sihon did not trust Israel to pass through his border. But Sihon gathered all his people together, and pitched in Yahatz, and fought against Israel. And the Lord, the God of Israel, delivered Sihon and all his people into the hand of Israel, and they smote them. So Israel possessed all the land of the Amorites, the inhabitants of that country, and they possessed all the border of the Amorites, from the Arnon to the Yabok, and from the wilderness to the Jordan. So now the Lord, the God of Israel, has dispossessed the Amorites from before his people Israel. And should you possess them, would you not possess that which Chemosh, your God, gives you to possess? So whomever the Lord our God has dispossessed from before us, we will possess them. And now are you any better than Balak, the son of Zippor, king of Moab? Did he ever strive against Israel, or did he ever fight against them? While Israel dwelt for 300 years in Heshbon and its towns, and in Aroer and its towns, and in all the cities that are along the side of the Arnon, why did you not recover them within that time? I therefore have not sinned against you, but you do me wrong to war against me. The Lord, the judge, be judge this day between the children of Israel and the children of Ammon. However, the king of the children of Ammon did not hearken to the words of Yiftach, which he sent him. Then the Spirit of the Lord came upon Yiftach, and he passed over Gilad and Menashe, and passed over Mitzpeh of Gilad. And from Mitzpeh of Gilad he passed over to the children of Ammon. And Yiftach vowed a vow to the Lord, and said, If you will indeed deliver the children of Ammon into my hand, then it shall be that whatever comes out of the doors of my house to meet me, when I return in peace from the children of Ammon, it shall be the Lord's, and I will offer it up for a burnt offering. So Yiftach passed over to the children of Ammon to fight against them, and the Lord delivered them into his hand. And he smote them from Aroer until you come to Minit, 20 cities, and to Abel Cheramim, with a very great slaughter. So the children of Ammon were subdued before the children of Israel.